It's been 100 days since President Donald Trump returned to the White House after a convincing electoral win. This period has been marked by dramatic policy changes through sweeping executive orders. These include tariff hikes that have shaken the global market. Joining us now is Ayesha Kajee, an international relations expert, to talk on this first 100 days. Ayesha, thank you so much for your time and for joining us. So Donald Trump dubs this the most successful 100 days of any administration in the history of the U.S. Do you share the same sentiment?
Absolutely not, Katleho. Good afternoon. I would have to say that I agree with former international relations professor at Wits University, John Stremler, who now he's himself an American citizen, and he's now at the Carter Center in Atlanta. He has characterized this first 100 days of Mr. Trump's second presidency as being marked by ignorance, cruelty, and greed. And I'd have to say, I agree with that. As you mentioned, Mr. Trump has signed more executive orders into being in his first 100 days in office than any other U.S. president in history. And amongst these executive orders has been the dissolving of, for example, U.S. international aid outside to foreign countries, as well as very stringent laws coming into force about immigrants in the U.S., laws that have cut federal jobs by almost 120,000. That means in Mr. Trump's first 100 days in office, 121,000 Americans have actually lost their jobs. Included, of course, is also the tariff hikes that you mentioned and some very, very chaotic U.S. foreign policy. So I would definitely not characterize these 100 days as the most successful or even among the most successful in U.S. history.
Well, I mean, the U.S. president says we haven't seen anything yet. And they're looking, with all that he's doing, is to see that resurgence of its domestic manufacturing within the U.S. Can they get to a place where they would be able to compete with China, perhaps?
Unlikely at this point, and certainly not likely in terms of, some of the raw materials they would need to beneficiate their own products in the US. So some of them are available in the continental US, but in order for proper beneficiation to take place, they will need certain types of technology and other associated materials that are not manufactured or not available in the US. And due to the tariff hikes he's raised on other countries, there's going to be reciprocity in that respect. And therefore, I don't see that domestic manufacturing in the US will reach the kind of levels that Chinese manufacturing has already reached. It's really highly unlikely in the short to medium term. And the medium term is what a presidency is all about in the end.
I mean, you speak of that tariff reciprocation, and we're seeing that spat between the US and China. We're seeing the spat that's currently happening out between US and South Africa. Can these fences be mended in the long term?
In term, I think yes. In the short term, I think it's going to take quite a lot of work. I think in South Africa's case, there is definitely mutual benefit in the former bilateral relations between the two countries. But given Mr. Trump's stance on South Africa, particularly his stance on both South Africa's case at the ICJ on Gaza, as well as South Africa's land laws, which Mr. Trump has characterized as being racist, and his misinformation, or I would say deliberate misinformation, so disinformation being peddled by certain groups, including some political parties in South Africa. I would say that unless Mr. Trump's misconceptions can be quickly rectified, and certainly that is what South Africa hopes, then the bilateral relations between the two countries are unlikely to warm considerably in the short term, perhaps in the medium term, because, as I said, the countries need one another. In China's case, it's a different issue entirely. China does not source much from the US, and although it does currently sell a fair amount to the US, it has loads of other markets to which it is also, entering quite deeply, including within continental Africa and including within the European Union, East Europe, the East, in terms of Southeast Asia, as well as South America, Canada, Mexico, the Antipodes, Australia, New Zealand. So China has a host of other markets and a host of other areas to source materials from, which it is doing quite successfully. So I think that could conceivably go on for longer, particularly if U.S. manufacturers and exporters do not actually pressure the Trump presidency quite considerably. They've already begun doing so. So we may see some policy change, but I think the between the countries actually.
All right, it seems we have lost Ayesha Kajee. They're giving us very poignant points with regards to that first 100 days of President Donald Trump being in office in the U.S. Ayesha, are you still there with us?
Yes.
You certainly are. I just wanted to get one last point from you. I mean, looking into your crystal ball and observing this 100 days of Trump in this recent time, what does this tell us about our future in terms of Africa and South Africa in relation to how we should expect for certain things to pan out for our country and the continent during this administration?
Well, I think the most immediate effect of Mr. Trump's presidency on South Africa particularly, but also many other countries within the continent, is the effect of the withdrawal of USAID funding. And we've seen South Africa turn elsewhere, both for that kind of development assistance, particularly the European Union. We've also seen other countries in Africa look east towards China, towards Russia, as well as the traditional, shall we say, funders in Scandinavia and Western Europe. But I think we're going to see more of that. We're going to see more insistence, like we've seen, for example, from President Traore in Burkina Faso, on more self-sufficiency in African countries. And I think that's going to be a good thing for the continent overall. It's high time the continent actually priced its raw materials better, beneficiated its own raw materials more efficiently, and started trading on an equivalent level to its trading partners outside the continent, instead of being exploited first as a colony and then first as colonies and then as former colonies. And Mr. Ramaphosa, for example, has made it quite clear he will not be bullied by Mr. Trump. So Mr. Trump still has some allies on the continent, including people like a Rwandan President Kagame. But remember that President Kagame has also come under fire for similar human rights abuses against his own people and neighboring countries, as Mr. Trump has. So Mr. Trump, Mr. Kagame, Mr. Netanyahu, Mr. Modi, those are birds of a feather. They will flock together, but I think ultimately they will be isolated by the rest of the world to one extent or the other.
Ayesha Kajee, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. That's international relations expert Ayesha Kajee, just giving us her take on the first 100 days of office for President Donald Trump.